Okay, so in today's video, we're going to be practicing multiplying decimals. And when solving for decimal multiplication up to the hundredths place value, we're going to be multiplying decimals with other decimals, as well as decimals with whole numbers. And this is TEK 5.3e. So when we're multiplying, we're finding the product or solving for the product of two numbers that are being multiplied together. So in this example, it's asking us what is the product of 94 hundredths and 6. So all we're going to be doing is multiplying these two digits together. Okay, so remember, when we're solving for decimal multiplication, we're going to start by treating it as a regular multiplication problem, meaning that we're going to ignore the decimal for a second and treat both digits as if they were whole numbers when we're multiplying. Then we will add the decimal back in. So I'm going to remind you how to do that. So let's start with the digit 94 hundredths. Now we're going to treat these as whole numbers. So it is not going to be a decimal for right now. We're actually going to count it as a whole number. So instead of writing 94 hundredths, we're just going to write 94. And then 6 is going to be here. So now we're going to go ahead and multiply 90 by 6. And we know 9 times 6 is 54. So 90 times 6 is 540. And then 4 and 6 is 24. So if you add those two numbers together, 540 and 24, 0 plus 4 is 4, 4 plus 2 is 6, and then you'll bring the 5 straight down. Your answer would be 564. So do you think that if you were to multiply 94 hundredths, which is less than one whole, by the number 6, that your answer would be 564? If you think no, you are absolutely correct, because this is not our final answer. Remember what I said, now we have to add the decimal back in. And in order to do this, we're going to count our swoops. And if you don't remember what that means, I'm going to show you now. So we're going to basically look at the number that has the decimal. So our number with the decimal is 94 hundredths. So we're going to count the number of digits after the decimal. So we're going to count 1, 2. So there are 2 digits after the decimal in one of the numbers that we multiplied. So that means if there are 2 digits after the number in one of the numbers that we use to multiply, which is a factor, then that means our product, or the answer to our multiplication problem, should also have 2 digits after the decimal. So we're going to start from the back of our answer, and we're going to count 1, 2. And now we're just going to add our decimal back in. So our final answer should be 5 and 64 hundredths. And if you go back to the problem, it's asking you to solve for the product of 94 hundredths and 6. Well, we know that this is less than one whole. If you were to think of this as 94 cents, that would be less than $1, right? So if you have less than $1 and you multiply that times 6, you should have less than $6 as your answer. And that makes sense, right? When we look at our final product of 5 and 64 hundredths. So that is how we would solve that problem or that example. All right, our second question or second example is asking us to solve to find the product of 8 tenths and 52 hundredths. So what that means is that we will be multiplying 8 tenths and 52 hundredths. So again, we're going to start by doing box method. You could also set it up as just a regular multiplication problem, 52 and 8, if you wanted to do it that way. So remember, 2 times 8 is 16, carry the 1, 5 times 8 is 40, add the 1, that would be 41, so your answer would be 416 if you did it that way. If you did it the box way, it would be the same setup as before. We could do 8 and 52. 8 times 5 is 40. And then you add in that extra 0. And then 2 times 8 is 16. So then if you add up 416, you would get the same answer that we got solving it the standard way, which is 416. But remember, are you done? Is this your final answer? No, because we are missing our decimals. So again, we're going to go in and count the swoops. Now this time, we have two numbers that have digits after the decimal. So we're going to start with this number, 8/10. We're going to count how many digits are after this decimal. Well, there's only one because it's only in the tenths place. But here, there are 1, 2. That means that there are two decimals. So there are a total of 3 digits after the decimal in our answer because there's 1 there and 2 there. So we're going to go back to our answer and we're going to count from the back. 1, 2, 3. So 3 spaces is how many we had to count. There should be 3 digits after the decimal. So our final answer should be 416 thousandths. And that is the product of 8/10 and 52 hundredths. Right, now our final example is asking us, what is 15 hundredths or 15% of $40? Now remember, 15 hundredths can be represented as a percentage as 15%. So 15 hundredths is equal to or the same as 15%. So we want to know, what is 15% or 15 hundredths of 40? So imagine that you go to a store and you're interested in buying a pair of shoes that cost $40, but you see a sign that says they're 15% off. Well, we need to figure out, what is 15% of 40? How much money are you going to really spend on the shoes and how much money will you be saving? In order to determine that answer, we're going to be multiplying, but we're not multiplying 15% by 40. We're going to be multiplying 15 hundredths by 40 because 15 hundredths is how this percentage is represented as a decimal. So we're going to be multiplying these two numbers and we're going to set it up again as a standard regular multiplication problem and then add the decimal. So you can do it box method or you can do it the standard method. I'm going to go ahead and do box method. So I'm going to have over here 10 and 5, that's 15 because there's 1 10 and 5 ones. And then 40, I have 40 and 0. So now I'm going to be multiplying and 40, and remember I will add these zeros back in. So 1 and 4 we know is 4, and add that 0, we have 400, which we should know that 10 times 40 is 400, since 10 times 10 is 100, 10 times 40 is 400. Now we have 5 times 40, well we know that 5 times 4 is 20, so if we add in that extra 0 there from that 40, that would be 200. 10 times 0 is 0, 5 times 0 is 0. So now we're going to add up 400 and 200. If we add those up together, we would get 600. But does that make sense that 15 hundredths or 15% of 40 would be 600? Does that make sense to think that 15% of 40 is 600? Impossible, because 600 is already greater than 40, right? And we know that we missed a step because we did not count our swoops or add our decimals back in. So let's go ahead and do that now. So we're going to count our swoops. So we have 1, 2. Now we're going to go back to our answer and we're going to count them. 1, 2. So remember, there was 2 digits after the decimal. Then in our answer, we started from the back and we counted 2. 1, 2. Now we can add our decimal right there. And I know it looks a little bit silly, but if we rewrite it, our answer would be $6. And that makes sense, right? Because 15% of $40 should be $6. So that means you're going to be saving $6 on your pair of shoes. So instead of paying $40 for a pair of shoes, you would just subtract then 40 minus 6, and you would get your answer as 34. And that's how much money you would be spending. But it's not asking us to solve for how much money we're actually going to spend on the shoes. It's just asking us really how much money we're going to save. Because if it's 15% off, that means like we're getting a 15% savings. So that 15% of 40, which is 1500ths of 40, that is just $6 or $6. And that's how we would solve that.